Hey guys, it's me, EODGamer here, and so version 1.2 new banners just officially dropped in the live stream. In the first half, we're going to have like Blade's banner, and in the second half, we're going to have Kafka's banner, together with the new 4-star character LyouRika, who's of the physical nihility element as well. We'll be doing more guides on like these new characters once more details are officially known to us, but let's talk first about like overall banners, how do they perform. My personal bias, I do prefer Kafka's banner a little bit more as a whole, collectively, maybe if you're a relatively new player compared to Blade's banner overall, but we will dive deeper in like the individual characters of both banners and what are my thoughts on them, as well as their eidolons too. Now let's get into it. Out of all the characters on this list, I think the one that is most underrated is probably Eren. A lot of people don't really understand how this character works, doesn't really have a better vibe. I've already done build guide videos as well as a showcase video on him recently. You can check it out on the channel if you're interested in preparing. Basically, Eren is going to feel very close to Blade, and it makes sense why they are on the same banner as well. Some people say that they prefer to play him together with Blade. Some people prefer not to play him at all. Depending on how you want to go, let's talk a bit about his overall eidolons, because most of us maybe have him at E0, or maybe you're getting him for the first time and building him. Out of my rating, I think if you were to build a rating all the way to S tier, where S tier is like the best, I would say he sits somewhere around A- tier, around there. Just because he's not a very easy character to play, we possibly need to run him with, for example, a shielder character like Jett to be able to sustain him, or maybe, as you can see in my recent videos, I also demonstrated a bit with Lota as well. Of course, Bailu's revive is very nice if you want to make use of his him playing at low life. Sometimes he does tend to die if he takes too much damage also. His eidolons, in my opinion, like they don't really scale very significantly. It's a bit of nice damage here and there, like increased 10% skill damage here. You have ability to remove debuff for oneself when you use skill and ultimate. Pretty nice to have, being a bit more self-sustainable, especially if you have like those burn DOT, wind shear DOTs. He tends to die if he doesn't cleanse it off because he's usually playing at quite low life. Other than that, this one here, this E4, I don't think is very good because it is only 2 turns later after you start the battle. If he's not instantly knocked out in 2 turns, this is kind of useless. In my opinion, from my experience playing him so far at least, I don't think it's very useful. Here, self-sacrifice is E6. When his health drops 50% or below, he just deals a bit more multiplier. A decent amount of rounding off for E6, but as you can see, his eidolons doesn't really change too much at all. In my opinion, some people might be thinking that this is probably the weakest out of all the 3 4-star characters on the banner, and I think I do agree as well. You probably will be getting a bit more value from the other characters. For those of you who are interested in playing this character out, do check out the other videos, but let's go on next with Susang, who's the other character on the banner as well. I think out of all the 3 4-stars, she's probably going to be the best in slot character of the 4-stars that most of us want to get, especially if we can get multiple copies of her. I think it's super strong as well. I have my Susang at E5 and I've tested out a lot. I've already done build guide videos on the channel, level 71 out of 80. I think most of us will be more interested in the thoughts on her as a character at E0 first, and I'll go into eidolons in a little bit. I think she's a very strong character, given that currently in the game, especially maybe once LyouRika comes out, she's still the only physical hunt DPS currently in the game, and of course, the other physical damage dealer that we have, other than physical MC of course, is Clara, who's like a 5-star character, and I don't have her on my account right now, but she's still a very solid character to deal a lot of physical break damage. There are some builds going around building her for break effect to do a lot of the physical break damage because she does break very often, and also she gets very good amounts of refund when she attacks an enemy that is broken with a skill. Let me just see where that is. I think it's in the eidolon if I'm not wrong. Right here. So E1, once you have this E1, you basically can just keep attacking the enemy that is weakness broken, and you are self-sufficient in terms of skill points as well. Super efficient. I think this is quite underrated in my opinion too, at least. So talking a bit more about her eidolons, before I give my overall thoughts on rating, this one is very strong. I think E1 is probably her strongest if I'm not wrong. E2, when Sword Stance is triggered, she has damage taken reduction by a bit. This is nice to have, but doesn't really, it just makes her more versatile as a character to have less damage taken. Break effect increased by 40%, tons of value as well. This is great, tremendous, especially since she's most likely going to be your only physical on the team that is doing a lot of toughness breaking. I think it's very efficient in that sense to get more break damage on your physical damage breaker. So here, last but not least, E6, Dwell Like Water. Talent speed boost is stackable to 2 times. When she enters the battle, immediately gains 1 stack. It does make her go a lot faster, and as we can see here, I think the trace, how much is that speed buff that she has? I think it's also here at like Trace level 6 is like 70. I think it goes all the way up to 20. So a 40% speed buff is quite significant, especially since her base speed here is like 107. So she's probably moving at like 147 most of the time. That is quite massive. She scales very well with Eidolons. I think E6 is very, very good value. If I were to rate her like on a scale of a tier list, like all the way to S tier, I think she's probably going to be S- tier or maybe A+ tier. It really depends if you have Clara already. If you don't have Clara, I think she ranks a bit higher. If you have Clara, maybe not as high, but still a very versatile character, given that the only Hun characters we have in the game are like her, Yanting, we have Zila as well as Danheng, who we currently only have like 4 characters in the game, so you don't really have much choice if you're looking for single target damage dealing. Last but not least, for the first banner, let's talk about Natasha. All of us have her as a free character, so I'm not going to talk a bit about her at E0. I'm just going straight into the constellations or Eidolons in this case. When she's attacked, if her HP is 30% or less, she heals up by a bit, just a bit more healing for herself really. And when Natasha uses her ultimate, grants more continuous healing to all allies who are lower life. I don't really notice this honestly in battle. I think I more rely on the instant heal rather than the continuous healing. I think it's mainly because I don't have this one up, this bonus ability, which is tons of value. I just haven't had the resources to come around it, as I've been building quite a bit of broadness in my roster too. I think it's still quite strong though. And number 4 here, after being attacked, regenerates 5 extra energy. I think out of like E1 to E6, E4 probably is the best, since it gives her a bit more energy refund as well, to be able to keep up the uptime on bursting the ultimate ability. As for most of us, if we have no need to use her skill ability, we most likely will normal attack with her to generate skill points for the team. This kind of just gives a better refund for the lack of using skill to push the amount of energy refund needed for the ultimate, for example. E6 I think is more of a nice gimmick to have, adds on individual damage. It's not very, very significant in my opinion. I think it does like 800 damage at most more, from what I feel at least so far. And it does add up because she does want to use her skill a lot, but I don't think it's like E6 worthy, considering that some people take a lot of resources to get her to E6. It's just a nice capstone in my opinion. Nonetheless, I think Natasha is considered as S tier, given that she's free to play character. But in terms of Eidolons, I don't think they are very, very important for her, which makes her a very good free-to-play character on her own. Nice to have her on a banner. I wouldn't be personally too happy to get her Eidolons if I was a free-to-play player. I would much rather like a character like Susang. Overall, I think the 3 characters are not too enticing to me for this first half of the banner for Blade. Out of all of them, definitely, as mentioned, Susang is the best. But I think what's more interesting is let's talk about the next one, which is probably going to be Kafka's banner, a more damage over time banner as well. First up, I'm going to talk about Serval. I've done all of the characters that I'm talking about in this video, like the build guides already, so go ahead and check it out on the channel. And if you're finding value in this video so far, do smash the like button and subscribe for more of such future content. We really do this like every single patch, so we can get first-hand information to plan. Serval, I think, is a very, very strong unit, especially since she's also an erudition character, lightning character. Unfortunately, she fills a very similar role to like Jingyuan, as well as Kafka, who's coming up, which means that she actually will be probably like going hand in hand with Kafka and helping proc like more shock DOT rather than maybe being like the solo carry that some people try to use as a proxy if they don't have Jingyuan, for example. If you guys haven't seen the video on like E0 Jingyuan versus E6 Serval, I highly recommend you check it out because it really justifies why, for example, going for multiple copies of Serval is actually quite interesting, especially if you don't have Jingyuan yet. And if she can pair with the banner character, all the more better. Let's talk a bit about her Eidolons. Basic attack deals lightning damage to the side targets or a random target adjacent, which is nice because it adds more splash to her already very good AoE kit. It's very useful for an erudition character. Every time when she triggers her talent, she regenerates more energy. This is triggered quite often as well. Good amounts of energy refund for her burst. Let's see how much is her burst. I can't really recall as of now. I think it's 100 or was it 120? Let me just see real quick. I think it's here. Yeah, so it's 100. So she already has a very, very low cost for her burst. So she does burst very often, and this just makes it like even easier to burst, for example. E4, make some noise. Ultimate has a 100% base chance to apply shock to any enemy that's not shocked. just keeps the shock uptime a lot more. I think it's very strong too. Same effects as one as skill. This is nice to have just to keep the uptime on shock. And E6 of course deals 30% more damage to shock enemies. Overall, in my opinion, I think she scales very well with Eidolons. I think if you were to ask me, this character at E0 probably will be okay-ish. Doesn't really impress me, but at E6, this character I think is really strong. If I were to give her a tier rating, like S tier being the highest, I probably will rank her at A tier. If for example, Jingyuan maybe is at A+ or S-, I'll rank Serval somewhere around AA+, around there. Just because she doesn't have that 5-star stat scaling that 5-star characters have as well. And she does work with quite good free-to-play light cones. Of course, I'm using a Battle Pass one here that's level 30, but you can easily use other ones like Seriousness of Breakfast and etc, etc. All works pretty well too, in my opinion. Not a bad pick as well. Other than that, the other character that's going to be on this banner will be Sampo. And I think Sampo, a lot of us probably don't. Sampo is probably like the equivalent of Ireland of this banner. We hardly will actually build this character. I don't know, maybe because we don't have it in our account. It wasn't like a raid up so far, or perhaps people just don't understand DOT very well. I've already done a guide on him, a build guide video, which I think goes a bit into DOT aspects. I'll be doing more videos as well, talking about DOT as Kafka is coming around the corner. So do stay tuned on the channel for that as well. But basically, let's talk about his Eidolons. I have him only at E1, as mentioned. He doesn't really have a raid up yet. When using a skill, does damage one time to an extra target, which is decent. It just bounces like kind of like one more time, which is nice. At the same time, we have E2 here, Infectious Enthusiasm, defeating an enemy with Wind Shear, basically like spreads that Wind Shear to everyone. I haven't had like a further Eidolon, so I haven't tested it myself, but I'll share with you like some thoughts based on like theory that I'm looking at. I think this is pretty nice, especially if he's able to like defeat enemies with the Wind Shear passive up on time. Might not be always if he's not like the main DPS on the team also. E4, the deeper the love, stronger the hate. When skill hits an enemy with 5 or more stacks of Wind Shear, immediately takes 8% of current Wind Shear damage. I think this is very useful, especially if you want to burst down enemies fast, and maybe they have like a sustain on the enemy team, and you want to just quickly like stack up as much damage as you can. This is pretty insane. Good amounts of instant burst damage that you have rather than having them take the turn, for example. And last but not least, Wind Shear damage multiplier increased by 15%. Because it stacks, this 15% actually adds up to quite a bit of damage, since he does apply a lot of stacks of Wind Shear too. I think if you were to ask me like a tier on like all the way up to S tier, Sampo is a character that has hardly been tested so far, especially since a lot of content creators, a lot of the meta is not revolving really around DOT. But maybe that would change once Kafka comes about. I do expect DOT to come more in the mix, and I will maybe reserve my rating for now. Maybe I'll wait for Kafka to come out and do more testing before I exactly rate it. For now, the current meta, it does seem that he's like a low A-, maybe. Not really fitting anywhere, especially since it doesn't really synergize with a lot of current characters in the game. Like, how many DOT characters do we have? Maybe Sampo, maybe a bit of Himiko, maybe some physical break that swats damage on the side. Maybe we have some, I don't know, Hook burning, Esthers burning here and there, Serval's shock. But by and large, there aren't really many characters that really work well with Sampo's kit right now, and that is why I rate him. Overall, I think the banner is very interesting, especially if characters want to have E6 Serval, or maybe also are interested in new characters like Luca, who I'll be talking about in another video, like going in-depth analysis on his kit. But basically, I do think he's a very interesting character. A Nihility physical character is definitely very useful if you're maybe running her, for example, Clara, and you want to complete like your mono physical team with, for example, Silverwolf. You can do so by slapping on Clara, you can slap on Natasha, you can slap on Luca, and you can round it off with like Silverwolf, or even you can just not use Silverwolf and put Susang in. I think that's like tons of efficiency. In order to do an in-depth video, I need to see his Eidolons as well for Luca, and that is why I'm doing it on another day. Otherwise, if you want to interested in like more version 1.2 content, do check out these 2 other videos where I talk about maybe the light cone banner or the characters and my thoughts on which one might be a better investment if you are sitting on the fence as well. Thank you so much for watching, and see you in the next video.